It was on a hot, expectant afternoon that something changed, and I knew I was about to become involved in a story of forbidden desire and seduction. Something in the atmosphere of that afternoon felt different, as if the air was impregnated with a tension that I couldn't explain but felt in every movement I made, in every breath I took. The heat wasn't the only thing suffocating me. There was something else, something invisible and dangerous, that attracted me and made me hesitate at the same time. The family was gathered in the garden, everyone enjoying the barbecue, the laughter, and the conversations that filled the air with a sense of normalcy. But for me, in that moment, what mattered wasn't the talk about the weather or the plans for the next trip. What truly took me off balance was the way he was watching me. The way his eyes followed every one of my movements, as if he wanted to store everything he saw, as if he was trying to uncover every little detail about me. And I, although I tried to ignore it, knew that I couldn't do the same. Something was happening and I couldn't stop it. What started as a simple suggestion from my husband to take advantage of the sauna after the barbecue turned into something I could no longer control. I hesitated, of course, after all, it wasn't something I imagined doing with everyone around. However, the idea of stepping away from the heat of the day and somehow escaping that uncomfortable feeling made me agree. I put on my red swimsuit, the one that always caught everyone's attention, and over it I wore a semi-transparent white beach cover-up. It barely covered my body, but in that situation it seemed enough to avoid drawing more curious glances. As I walked to the sauna, I could feel the gazes directed at me. Some discreet, others not so much. But there was one gaze in particular that seemed to fixate on me in a unique way. My father-in-law's gaze. I could feel the weight of his attention, a subtle but undeniable pressure that made me tremble inside, even though I tried not to show it. Every step I took toward the sauna, he was there, watching, studying me with a focus that disconcerted me but at the same time excited me in a way I couldn't explain. I entered the sauna and sat beside my husband, trying to keep things normal. The dense steam began to fill the room, and soon my skin was glowing, covered in sweat that slowly trickled down. The heat of the sauna now seemed small compared to the feeling of something imminent, something about to happen. My husband, his mind focused on chatting with the friends, said he would go get more water and quickly stood up, leaving me there alone with my father-in-law. The feeling of solitude was an open door to the unknown, and I knew without a doubt that something was about to happen. But what? The silence between the two of us was thick, loaded with palpable tension. It was as if the walls of the sauna were closing in around us, making everything more intense. He slowly moved closer, his soft footsteps on the wooden floor, until he sat closer to me than I ever imagined. The space that had once felt comfortable was now charged with an electricity that made me hold my breath. I felt the heat of his body like a flame igniting inside me, surpassing even the heat of the sauna, and my heart started to race. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice hoarse, low, almost a whisper, but enough to make me tremble inside. I nodded, trying to maintain composure, even though I knew I was about to lose control. His eyes slowly traveled down my body, and although I tried to look away, I couldn't. His eyes were fixed on me, almost as if undressing me from the inside more than physically. They lingered on my red swimsuit, on my cleavage, on the contours of my breasts, and I could feel the tension building with each passing second. Every drop of sweat that ran down my skin seemed to intensify the desire that was building inside me. That's when he extended his hand, lightly brushing my shoulders, as if he wanted to move a strand of hair that had stuck to my skin. His touch, so gentle but laden with an intention I couldn't ignore, made my body tremble. Something inside me broke. "It's really hot in here, don't you think?" he said, with a suggestive smile on his lips. The way he spoke, with that almost imperceptible smile, made me understand that he knew exactly what he was doing, and that excited me even more. I knew I was on the brink of something I couldn't turn back from. Before I could think of any reaction, he slowly pulled off my beach cover-up, revealing more of my body. I should have resisted, should have stopped him, but my body didn't obey. It reacted differently, in tune with something more primal, deeper. When the piece of clothing hit the floor, he looked at me with an expression full of desire. The intensity of his gaze, the way he desired me, something I never imagined coming from him, stirred me in a way I couldn't explain. The forbidden nature of it made me feel alive, on a level I had never experienced before. He moved even closer, our bodies now almost touching, and I could feel his warm breath against my face. The distance between us seemed to disappear, and the tension that hung in the air was now in the touch of our skin. Then, with unexpected delicacy, he held my chin and lifted my face, forcing me to look into his eyes. We stayed there, looking at each other, the seconds stretching infinitely until finally, he took the initiative and pressed his lips to mine. Kiss began soft, exploratory, but soon turned into something much more intense, urgent, as if we were freeing ourselves from an invisible prison. My hands moved automatically, sliding over his strong chest, feeling the tense muscles beneath his warm skin. He, in turn, moved his hands down my body, reaching my waist, pulling me even closer to him. The sauna, the heat that enveloped us, seemed irrelevant compared to the fire that was burning inside us. "Someone could see us," I whispered between kisses, but my concern was superficial, a mere excuse to heighten the excitement. The danger, the risk of getting caught, only made everything more thrilling. He smiled mischievously, his expression carrying something beyond desire. His hands went to the knot of my swimsuit, and with a quick motion, he untied it, revealing my breasts. The fabric gave way, and I was completely vulnerable before him. His lips trailed down my neck, and I could feel each kiss like an explosion against my skin. It was then that we heard footsteps approaching. The sound of movement was enough to bring me back to reality. I quickly adjusted myself, and he pulled away, trying to disguise it but still keeping his gaze on me. When my husband entered the sauna, with bottles of water in his hands and a carefree smile on his face, the scene seemed completely normal to him. He didn't know, he had no idea what had just happened there. That moment, something inside me had changed. The desire I had felt, the forbidden desire I had for my father-in-law, would not be easily erased. And the tension that now lingered between us after we had crossed that line would become something impossible to ignore. Tension in the air was now palpable, stronger than ever. The heat of the sauna, which had seemed unbearable before, now seemed nothing more than a distraction. My body still pulsed with the sensation of his touch, and my thoughts swirled chaotically in my mind. What had happened there couldn't be ignored, it wouldn't be easy to forget. I knew that everything that had happened had left a mark inside me, a mark that wouldn't disappear so easily. As my husband settled into the sauna, oblivious to what had occurred moments before, I felt more and more out of control. Every movement of mine seemed to be observed, analyzed, and in my mind he was always there, my father-in-law's eyes fixed on me, as if he still desired me in some way, even though nothing had been said. What had happened between us wasn't just a simple kiss, but an exchange of energies, something that had expanded in a way I could no longer ignore. Tension between the two of us continued to grow, an invisible thread connecting us in an intimate and dangerous way. I knew something would have to happen sooner or later. How could we continue pretending nothing had changed? How could I look into the eyes of my husband or any other family member, knowing what had occurred in that enclosed space between the steam and the heat? Reality now seemed distant, and all I felt was an overwhelming desire that infiltrated all of my thoughts. The night seemed to drag on as I tried to keep up appearances. The barbecue finally ended, and everyone began to say their goodbyes. But there was something inside me that was irreparably changed, as if I had crossed a line I could no longer return from. While my husband said his goodbyes to the others, my eyes searched for my father-in-law's. He was there, quiet, but I could see the same tension in his eyes. He knew nothing was resolved, that the desire still hung in the air, waiting to be released. Path to change seemed inevitable. I knew I couldn't keep pretending nothing had happened. That moment hadn't changed everything between us. In that instant, it was clear to me that the forbidden desire would not be something that would disappear easily. Something inside me was boiling, and the idea of trying to resist that feeling seemed further and further away. I knew that, somehow, he would feel the same, and the tension we now shared couldn't be ignored for much longer. That night, as I lay in bed, my body was still on fire, and my mind couldn't stop thinking about him. Every touch, every glance was etched into my skin and memory. What had started as a simple encounter in the sauna had now become a story of unfulfilled desire, a tension that only grew stronger with each passing day. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: nothing would be the same. And so, with the weight of what had happened on my shoulders, I knew I could no longer go back. I had crossed a line, and the tension between me and him, my father-in-law, would only intensify. What had started as a subtle attraction, a fleeting glance, was now something deeper, something that connected us in a dangerous and forbidden way. And deep down, I knew we both felt the same: a flame that couldn't be extinguished, a desire that could no longer be ignored. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: this story still had many chapters to be written. Now that you know the truth, what would you do in her place? Leave your opinion in the comments and share your thoughts. Your interaction is very important. If you enjoyed this intense and captivating story, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next stories full of tension, forbidden romance, and desire. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.